In an age burdened by fear and longing, when hearts were weary of injustice and souls were searching for meaning, there lived a man named Shimon, known among those close to him for his quiet nature and unwavering honesty. He was not a man of power, nor did he seek authority or recognition. His life was simple, his hands accustomed to labor, and his mind devoted to reflection. From an early age, he questioned the traditions that surrounded him, troubled by the way people bowed to forms and rituals, while forgetting the essence of devotion to the one God. Shimon lived in a land where faith had become a burden rather than a light. Religious leaders argued endlessly over law and status, while the poor were crushed beneath their indifference. The Roman presence weighed heavily on the people, enforcing order through fear, while hope slowly faded from the streets and homes. Shimon observed all this in silence, sensing that truth could not be confined within the walls of authority or inherited beliefs. It was during this time that whispers began to spread about a man named Jesus, son of Mary, a teacher whose words stirred the depths of the human heart. They said he spoke not like scholars or rulers, but like one who carried certainty within him. They said the sick were healed by his touch, the broken found peace in his presence, and the arrogant were unsettled by his words. Many dismissed these accounts as exaggeration or deception, but Shimon felt something awaken inside him. When Shimon finally encountered Jesus, it was not the miracles that moved him, but the clarity of his message. Jesus spoke of devotion to God alone, of humility, of mercy, and of a kingdom not built by swords or crowns. His voice carried no desire for domination, only an urgent call to awaken the conscience. Shimon listened, not as a curious observer, but as one who had been waiting his entire life for such words. From that moment, Shimon followed him. He became one of those who remained close, observing not only the public teachings, but the private moments of reflection and prayer. Shimon noticed how Jesus withdrew from crowds, how he avoided praise, and how he warned his followers against seeking power. There was a deep sadness in Jesus, as though he carried the weight of knowing what lay ahead. Shimon sensed that this mission would not end in celebration, but in trial. Among the followers, there were many personalities. Some were eager, some fearful, others confused. But Shimon distinguished himself through steadiness. He spoke little, yet when he did, his words were measured and sincere. Jesus entrusted him with matters others could not bear, for Shimon understood that faith was not excitement, but endurance. As opposition grew, so did danger. Religious authorities saw Jesus as a threat, not because he sought rebellion, but because he exposed hypocrisy. The people were divided. Some believed, others accused him of deception. Shimon witnessed the rising hostility and felt the tension tighten like a cord around their lives. Still, he did not retreat. One night, as they sat in quiet solitude, Jesus spoke to Shimon about responsibility. He warned him that after his departure, confusion would spread, and truth would be mixed with falsehood. Shimon listened in silence, understanding that this was not an honor but a burden. He was being prepared not for leadership in the eyes of men, but for guardianship of meaning in a world that would soon distort it. When the plot against Jesus reached its climax, fear overcame many. Friends scattered, loyalties wavered, and the night grew heavy with betrayal. Shimon's heart was torn between grief and resolve. He could not prevent what was decreed, yet he could remain faithful to what he had been taught. Then came the moment that changed everything. Jesus was taken from their sight, saved by God from the hands of his enemies. The streets filled with confusion, and rumors spread like fire. Some believed he had been defeated. Others claimed visions and interpretations. But Shimon knew one thing with certainty. The message was not over. In the days that followed, isolation became his companion. The followers argued, uncertain of what path to take. Some sought safety, others sought influence. Shimon chose neither. He chose silence, reflection, and patience. He carried within him teachings entrusted to his care, knowing that revelation is not preserved by force, but by integrity. Thus began Shimon's true trial, not in public, but in the shadows of history, where truth is tested not by enemies alone, but by those who claim to defend it. And the world, unaware, moved steadily toward division. After Jesus was taken from the sight of his enemies, the world did not become quieter, as many had hoped. Instead, confusion spread like a slow-moving storm. Rumors replaced certainty, fear replaced clarity, and each man began to interpret events according to his own desire or weakness. Those who had once stood together now questioned one another, and unity dissolved into fragile alliances. Shimon watched this unfold with a heavy heart. He understood that the absence of a prophet does not leave behind silence, but noise. Everyone claimed to speak in his name, yet few truly understood his message. Some spoke with sincerity but lacked depth, while others spoke with confidence but sought influence. Shimon chose restraint, knowing that truth spoken at the wrong time could be buried beneath ambition. Persecution intensified. The authorities, having failed to silence Jesus, turned their attention to his followers. Homes were searched, gatherings were broken, and whispers became dangerous. Some followers fled to distant lands, hoping safety would preserve their faith. Others adapted their message to survive, softening its edges, altering its meaning. Shimon saw these compromises and felt the weight of responsibility grow heavier upon him. He moved quietly from place to place, never staying long enough to be recognized. To those who sought him sincerely, he spoke plainly of devotion to God alone, of humility, and of the danger of elevating messengers beyond their purpose. He reminded them that miracles were signs, not foundations, and that love without truth becomes deception. But time was not kind to clarity. New interpretations emerged, clothed in eloquence and philosophy. Concepts unfamiliar to the original message entered the discourse, appealing to powerful minds and political interests. Shimon resisted these changes, not with force, but with refusal. He would not reshape truth to make it acceptable. This resistance isolated him. Former companions distanced themselves, some out of fear, others out of disagreement. They accused him of rigidity, of refusing progress, of clinging to an outdated understanding. Shimon accepted their accusations in silence. He had learned from Jesus that popularity was never the measure of righteousness. As years passed, the movement grew in numbers but weakened in essence. Institutions began to form, hierarchies emerged, and titles replaced humility. Shimon recognized the pattern well known in the history of faith. When belief becomes power, power reshapes belief. He withdrew further into obscurity. Yet even in hiding, his influence endured. He taught a small circle of devoted individuals, not to rule, but to remember. He instructed them to guard the message without altering it, to speak truth even when silence was safer, and to expect loss rather than reward. He warned them that the greatest trial would not come from open enemies, but from internal corruption disguised as devotion. Shimon knew his time was limited. Age slowed his steps, but not his resolve. He carried within him the certainty that truth does not require witnesses to exist, only guardians to survive. And so he prepared himself for the final chapter of his life, not knowing how history would remember him, but confident that God would not forget. In his final years, Shimon lived far from centers of influence. His presence was known only to a few, his name spoken cautiously, as though it carried both hope and danger. He no longer traveled as he once had. Instead, people came to him quietly, under cover of night, or through trusted paths. They did not come seeking miracles or authority, but reassurance that truth still existed. Shimon spoke to them with calm certainty. He told them that faith is not inherited through institutions, nor preserved through force. It lives in conscience, survives through sincerity, and is lost when convenience replaces conviction. He reminded them that Jesus had never sought to dominate the world, only to awaken it. As illness weakened his body, Shimon felt no regret. He had not achieved fame, nor left behind monuments, but he had fulfilled his duty as a witness. In his final days, he entrusted what remained of the message to those he believed could carry it without distortion, even if they would be ignored or persecuted. He warned them one last time that history would be written by the powerful, not the truthful, and that their role was not to win narratives, but to remain faithful. He told them that deviation often begins with small concessions, justified by good intentions, until nothing of the original remains. Then, quietly, Shimon passed from this world. There were no crowds, no ceremonies, no recorded speeches. His death went unnoticed by rulers and institutions alike. Yet in that unnoticed passing lay the essence of his life, a man who guarded truth without demanding recognition. In the generations that followed, stories multiplied and doctrines hardened. Some remembered Shimon as a pillar, others as a footnote, many not at all. His teachings survived only in fragments, scattered among those who refused to surrender conscience to authority. But the truth he carried did not disappear. It remained as a silent measure, exposing deviation, reminding seekers that faith was never